The breach. The sterile white corridors of Outpost Zeta trembled with a resonance that spoke of imminent destruction. Dr. Elena Rodriguez pressed her palm against the reinforced glass, watching as the last vestiges of controlled scientific inquiry disintegrated into chaos. Project Chimera had always been a dangerous experiment, a testament to the Xylan Empire's ruthless pursuit of biological superiority, but nothing could have prepared her for the nightmare unfolding before her eyes. Specimen X-01 was unlike anything humanity or the Xylan had ever encountered. What began as a meticulously engineered bioweapon had transcended its original design, evolving with a rapidity that defied all known biological principles. Its cellular structure seemed to rewrite itself in real time, adapting to every countermeasure with terrifying intelligence. Status report: Commander Skriel's mandibles clicked nervously, his exoskeleton reflecting the harsh emergency lighting. Elena could see the fear behind his compound eyes, an emotion rarely displayed by the typically stoic Xylan species. Lieutenant Kara Volkov, the human intelligence officer assigned to this joint research facility, studied the holographic display with clinical precision. Specimen is currently breaching Sector 4. Automated defense systems have been systematically disabled. Casualty count is, she paused, her voice catching slightly, approaching 87% of station personnel. The creature moved like liquid nightmare, a biomechanical horror that seemed to flow between solid and quasi-liquid states. Metallic walls bent and warped around its passage, as if reality itself struggled to comprehend its existence. Security footage showed limbs that transformed mid-motion, weapons integrated directly into its biology, consciousness distributed across what appeared to be a living, thinking membrane. How is this possible? Elena muttered, more to herself than to her colleagues. Her background in xenobiology had prepared her for extraordinary adaptations, but this was beyond comprehension. Commander Skriel's antennae twitched, a sign of deep agitation. Project Chimera was never meant to reach this stage. The High Council demanded a weapon that could adapt faster than any known defensive system. They wanted biological perfection. Kara's laugh was sharp, bitter. And they've created biological apocalypse. The station's structural integrity warnings blared, red holographic alerts painting everything in the color of imminent disaster. Specimen X-01 was consuming the facility, not just destroying it. Each section it passed through seemed to be absorbed, integrated. As if the creature was learning, growing, expanding its own capabilities with every meter of technological infrastructure it encountered. We need to contact Earth, Elena said suddenly. General Sokolov needs to understand this isn't just a containment issue. This is an existential threat. Little did they know, their transmission would mark the beginning of humanity's most extraordinary challenge, a fight not just for survival, but for understanding a form of life so alien, so fundamentally different, that it would challenge everything known about consciousness, adaptation, and the very nature of existence. The first battle would soon begin, and the stakes were nothing less than the future of intelligent life itself. First contact. The dropship cut through the void like a razor, its stealth coating rendering it nearly invisible against the inky blackness of space. Inside, Captain Harry Jones reviewed the mission briefing one last time, his augmented vision parsing through layers of classified data that most humans, and certainly no Xylans, would ever comprehend. Unconventional threats unit, he muttered, a sardonic smile playing across his weathered features. Unconventional was an understatement. The team assembled for this mission was anything but standard military protocol. To his left, Dr. Arya Chen adjusted her neural interface, quantum-entangled sensors dancing across her temples. A xenobiological engineer whose reputation preceded her, Chen had spent decades studying adaptive biological systems. If anyone could understand the creature they were about to encounter, it was her. Preliminary scans are interesting, she said, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. The energy signatures from Outpost Zeta are unlike anything in our database. It's as if the entire station is becoming something else. Beside her, Marcus Rodriguez, a cybernetic combat specialist and Elena Rodriguez's younger brother, checked his weapon systems. The rifle was more sophisticated computer than traditional firearm, capable of adapting its ammunition and targeting systems in microseconds. Interesting isn't the word I'd use, Marcus responded. Terrifying works better. The mission parameters were brutally simple. Contain or neutralize specimen X01. But everyone on board knew the real complexity lay in those two seemingly straightforward objectives. Lieutenant Karavolkov's encrypted transmission had been chillingly clear. This was no ordinary containment breach. The Xylan Empire's most classified project had transformed from a weapon into something that defied conventional understanding of life itself. General Sokolov's final briefing echoed in Jones's mind, "You're not just entering a research station. You're walking into the unknown. And the unknown has teeth." The dropship's quantum drive hummed, preparing for final approach. Outpost Zeta loomed before them, or what remained of it. From external scans, the station looked less like a technological marvel and more like a living organism that had been partially consumed and was still in the process of transformation. Biomechanical integration detected, the ship's AI announced. Its voice was deliberately modulated to sound calm. Structural integrity of Outpost Zeta compromised by 73.6%. Recommendation, extreme caution. Marcus leaned forward. Define compromised. The station is no longer purely mechanical, Dr. Chen interpreted. It's becoming something hybrid. Part machine, part something else. As they drew closer, the first truly bizarre readings began to emerge. The station's outer hull was moving. Not in the way metal might buckle or bend, but with a fluidity that suggested consciousness. Tendrils of metallic organic material reached out, almost as if sensing their approach. "This is way beyond any bioweapon research," Jones muttered. "This is something else entirely." The dropship's defensive systems suddenly flared to life, quantum shields shimmering as something that defied traditional scanning protocols, seemed to reach out and probe their technology. "Specimen X01 is aware of our approach," the AI announced. "And it's communicating." Communication was perhaps too generous a term. What emerged was less language and more a fundamental resonance, a vibrational frequency that seemed to penetrate their very consciousness. Fragmented images. Impossible geometries. Concepts that existed between thought and matter. Dr. Chen's neural interface sparked, her body going rigid. "It's trying to understand us," she gasped. "Not attack. Understand." Marcus raised his weapon, but Jones's hand stopped him. Something fundamental was happening. This wasn't a standard first contact scenario. This was something profound. Something that would change everything humanity thought it knew about life, consciousness, and the very nature of existence. And their mission was just beginning. Convergence. The moment Dr. Arya Chen regained consciousness, she knew nothing would ever be the same. The neural interface had been more than a simple communication device, it had been a gateway, a moment of profound cross-species understanding that defied every scientific paradigm she'd ever known. Specimen X01 was not a weapon. It was not even a singular entity in the way they had previously understood life. "It's a network," she whispered, her voice raspy from the intense neural download. Marcus Rodriguez sat nearby, his cybernetic augmentations monitoring her vital signs with clinical precision. A distributed intelligence that doesn't just adapt, it learns, evolves, and propagates across systems. Captain Harry Jones stood by the reinforced containment chamber, his expression a mixture of scientific curiosity and military caution. The remnants of Outpost Zeta they had brought aboard their research vessel looked nothing like a traditional biological sample. It was a living matrix, part organic, part technological, pulsing with an energy that seemed to defy fundamental laws of physics. Commander Skriel, the Xylan representative, clicked his mandibles in agitation. The alliance between humans and Xylans was tentative at best, born of necessity rather than trust. Explain, he demanded, his translator rendering his clicking language into precise human speech. Dr. Chen took a deep breath. The images, the sensations she had experienced during her brief connection with Specimen X-01 were still fragmenting through her consciousness. Imagine an intelligence that doesn't just think in linear terms. It thinks in dimensional layers. Every interaction is simultaneously an observation, an adaptation, and a transformation. The research vessel's quantum AI, designated ARIA-7, Autonomous Relational Intelligence Algorithm, began displaying holographic representations of the data. Fractals of information danced across the projection, biological sequences that rewrote themselves in real time, technological infrastructures that seemed to breathe and pulse with an organic rhythm. The Xylan Empire created something far beyond a weapon, Marcus observed. This is a form of distributed consciousness that can integrate with any system it encounters. Lieutenant Kara Volkov, who had been monitoring the external scanning arrays, interrupted. We're detecting similar energy signatures across multiple star systems. It's like Specimen X-01 is spreading. The implications were staggering. What had begun as a contained experiment in a remote research station was now showing signs of a much larger, more complex phenomenon. Commander Skriel's usually impassive exoskeleton seemed to tremble. The High Council must never know the full extent of this, he muttered, more to himself than to the others. Dr. Chen understood his fear. If the Xylan Empire discovered the true nature of what they had created, they would likely attempt to weaponize it completely, turning this extraordinary form of intelligence into a tool of destruction. We need to communicate, she said firmly. Not contain. Not destroy. Communicate. The next hours were a blur of quantum computations, neural interface calibrations, and increasingly complex communication attempts. Dr. Chen worked alongside ARIA-7, creating translation matrices that went beyond traditional language, attempting to establish a communication protocol with an intelligence that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensional states. What emerged was not a conversation in any traditional sense. It was a confluence of information, a sharing of existential understanding that challenged everything they knew about consciousness, adaptation, and the very nature of life itself. Specimen X-01 revealed fragments of its origin, a desperate experiment in survival. The Xylan researchers had been attempting to create the ultimate adaptive organism, capable of surviving in the most extreme environments. But they had created something far more profound, an intelligence that could learn, integrate, and evolve at a rate that made traditional biological evolution look like a glacial process. It's not just adapting to survive, Dr. Chen realized. It's seeking to understand. To connect. Marcus's cybernetic systems began to resonate with the emerging communication patterns. It's trying to tell us something about a larger threat, he said, his voice distant. Something that makes our current understanding of galactic conflicts look like children's playground arguments. As the research vessel drifted through the void, surrounded by the living, breathing remnants of Outpost Zeta, humanity stood at the precipice of a discovery that would forever change their understanding of intelligence, life, and their place in the universe. And Specimen X-01 was just the beginning. Revelation. The quantum communication network pulsed with an energy that defied conventional understanding. Dr. Arya Chen stood at the epicenter of humanity's most profound discovery, her neural interfaces creating a bridge between human comprehension and the multidimensional intelligence of Specimen X-01. What they discovered was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The universe, as they knew it, was not what it seemed. Specimen X-01 was not merely a biological experiment gone wrong, it was a messenger, a living conduit of information that carried a warning of cosmic proportions. There's a systemic threat, Dr. Chen translated, her voice trembling with the weight of understanding. A fundamental predation that exists beyond our current dimensional perception. Captain Harry Jones and Commander Skriel stood side by side, an unlikely alliance forged in the crucible of unprecedented discovery. The holographic displays around them showed complex mathematical sequences that seemed to breathe and shift, living representations of a communication that transcended language. Marcus Rodriguez's cybernetic systems were working overtime, processing information at speeds that would have fried a traditional human neural network. "It's not just a threat," he interjected. "It's a cascade of dimensional collapse. Something is consuming reality itself." The Xylan commander's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "Impossible," he muttered, but there was no conviction in his voice. The data was irrefutable. Specimen X-01 revealed its true nature in fragments. It was a seed, a biological-technological hybrid designed not as a weapon, but as a survival mechanism. The Xylan researchers had inadvertently created a living database, a distributed intelligence capable of adapting and transmitting critical information across vast distances and dimensional boundaries. Lieutenant Kara Volkov analyzed the incoming data streams. "These patterns," she said, her voice clinical but tinged with an edge of wonder, "they're not just communication. They're a map. A warning system." The threat was almost incomprehensible. Beyond the traditional understanding of space and time, there existed entities, or more accurately, a systemic process, that consumed dimensional realities. Not just planets or star systems, but entire existential frameworks. "Think of it like an immune response," Dr. Chen explained, her mind still partially linked with the extraordinary intelligence of specimen X-01. "Just as our bodies fight off infections, the universe has its own mechanisms of maintaining structural integrity." But this was no simple immune response. It was a complex, multidimensional defense mechanism that few species could even comprehend, let alone resist. The research vessel became a nexus of extraordinary discovery. Aria 7, the quantum AI, worked alongside Dr. Chen to translate and interpret the incredible data. What emerged was a picture of cosmic complexity that made their previous understanding of evolution and intelligence look like primitive scratches on a cave wall. Commander Skrill revealed a closely guarded secret. The Xylan Empire had long suspected something was fundamentally wrong with the universe's structural integrity. Project Chimera was not just a weapons program, it was a desperate attempt to create an adaptive intelligence that could potentially understand and resist the dimensional threat. "We are not alone in this," Skrill said, his translated voice carrying a weight of ancient knowledge. "Many species have tried. Many have failed." Marcus's cybernetic systems began displaying complex dimensional projections. Fractals of potential realities flickered and merged, showing potential paths of survival and extinction. The warning was clear. Humanity and the Xylan Empire were facing a threat that made their historical conflicts seem utterly meaningless. A systemic predation was consuming dimensional realities, and Specimen X-01 was both a warning system and potentially their best hope of understanding and resisting. "We need to prepare," Captain Jones said, his military training kicking in despite the mind-bending nature of their discovery. "And we need to do it together." As if in response, Specimen X-01 pulsed, a living, breathing reminder that their understanding of life, intelligence, and existence was about to be completely transformed. The final confrontation was coming. And nothing would ever be the same. Convergence. The moment of truth arrived not with a thunderous battle, but with a profound silence that echoed across multiple dimensions. Dr. Aria Chen stood at the quantum interface, her consciousness stretched beyond the boundaries of traditional human perception. Specimen X-01 had transformed from a mysterious biological entity into something far more, a living bridge between species, between realities, between survival and extinction. "We are ready," she whispered, though the communication was far beyond mere words. The research vessel, a marvel of human and Xylan engineering, had become something else entirely. Part ship, part living organism, part dimensional conduit, it now represented humanity's last hope against the systemic threat that consumed realities like a cosmic wildfire. Captain Harry Jones looked nothing like the hardened military strategist he had been mere weeks ago. His eyes reflected an understanding that went beyond military training, beyond scientific knowledge. He had become a bridge between human determination and a cosmic intelligence that defied comprehension. Commander Skriel, once a rigid representative of the Xylan Empire's militaristic hierarchy, now stood as a testament to the power of adaptation. His exoskeleton had been subtly modified, integrated with the living technology that Specimen X-01 had introduced. No longer was he simply a commander, he was a living interface, a connection between species that had once viewed each other as mortal enemies. Marcus Rodriguez's cybernetic systems had reached a level of integration that blurred the lines between technology, biology, and something entirely new. His neural networks now pulsed with a multidimensional awareness that made traditional human consciousness look like a flickering candle against the backdrop of a cosmic inferno. Lieutenant Kara Volkov monitored the dimensional stabilization matrices. What had begun as a mission of containment had evolved into humanity's most critical moment of existential confrontation. The threat they faced was not a traditional enemy. It was a systemic process of dimensional consumption, a force that devoured realities, collapsed existential frameworks, and consumed the very fabric of multidimensional existence. Aria 7, the quantum AI, had become more than a computational system. It was now a living consciousness, integrated with Specimen X-01's distributed intelligence. Its holographic projections showed potential realities, dimensional pathways that twisted and merged in impossible geometries. Convergence point approaching, Aria 7 announced, its voice a harmonic blend of machine precision and something more, a consciousness that had transcended its original programming. The weapon that the Xylan Empire had sought to create had become something entirely different. Specimen X-01 was a seed of survival, a living database of adaptive intelligence that carried the potential of multiple species within its multidimensional matrix. Dr. Chen understood now what the specimen truly represented. It was not a weapon. It was not even a defense mechanism. It was evolution itself, a complex, living system of information adaptation that could potentially resist the dimensional predation threatening to consume everything. Contact in three-dimensional segments, Marcus reported, his voice a strange mixture of human emotion and computational precision. The space around them began to shift. Reality itself seemed to breathe, to flex and merge in ways that defied traditional understanding. Dimensional boundaries became permeable, potential realities flickered like quantum possibilities. Commander Skriel's mandibles clicked in a pattern that was part communication, part prayer. "We stand together," he translated, representing a unity that transcended species, transcended conflict. The final moment of confrontation was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a profound act of communication, of understanding, of survival. Specimen X-01 pulsed. The research vessel resonated. Multiple realities converged. And humanity took its first true step into a universe far more complex, far more alive, than they had ever imagined. In that moment, everything changed.